because he just shot her in the head. And he wouldn't even help her. And seeing that she had been shot and carried out the house. Oh, man.
I'm not trying to attack his character, Judge. I'm trying to...
What's the question even make sense?
Anthony Kirkland, a convicted serial killer, was responsible for the deaths of at least 5 women between 1987 and 2009. His crimes involved strangulation, sexual assault, followed by disposing of the bodies in a shocking manner. His killing spree came to light in 2009 with the murders of Cassandra Crawford and Esme Kenny, leading to his arrest. In 2010, Kirkland was convicted and sentenced to death for the murders of Crawford and Kenny. The Ohio Supreme Court later ruled that his past murders, including the deaths of 3 other women, would be taken into account during his trial.
Mr. Kirkland, I understand, sir, that you were involved in a situation over in the jail this morning resulting in a situation where some type of physical restraints or whatever were used, and the possibility of the use of those in the courtroom.
In a surprising twist, in 2012, during a routine jail session, Kirkland had an incident that threatened to impact his trial. He had a violent confrontation with jail officers, leading to the possibility of additional physical restraints in the courtroom during his trial. Although his defense team worked hard to present him in a less threatening light, the jail incident raised concerns. Kirkland had been wearing a dress shirt and tie in court, and his restraints were typically removed before jurors arrived in an effort to keep his appearance from reinforcing his convict status. However, after the jail disturbance, the judge indicated that Kirkland could be brought to court in shackles, handcuffs, or even in a restraint chair if necessary to maintain order. His defense team, however, fought against this, arguing that such measures could negatively influence the jury.
I've done in the past, and if I have to, I will do it again. You will be brought into the courtroom. You'll be brought in either shackles, handcuffs. Obviously, the stun cuff's going to stay on, but even could result in the restraint chair being used if that's necessary.
During a 2012 hearing, Anthony Kirkland attempted to speak to the judge, asserting that he did not initiate the jail incident that had caused complications in his case. This outburst revealed Kirkland's attempt to control the narrative, although he stayed mostly silent for the rest of the proceedings.
I have a statement to make, though.
Well, before you do that, you better check with your attorney. This isn't the time to make a statement about what happened over in the jail.
Is this what you wanted to tell the judge about this morning?
Well, then I didn't, because the impression is that I initiated this. I didn't initiate this incident.
After being found guilty of the murders of Cassandra Crawford and Esme Kenny, the jury's next task was to decide whether Kirkland should be sentenced to death. Since his guilt was already established, the jury only had to determine his fate.
If the evidence warrants it and the law allows it, could you fairly consider the imposition of a sentence of death in a particular case?
In 2013, they recommended the death penalty, and the judge imposed the sentence, marking the end of his violent criminal spree. Despite the death sentence, Kirkland's lawyers argued that the sentencing phase had been mishandled, leading to delays in the case. The Ohio Supreme Court reviewed the matter and upheld the death sentence in 2020. As of now, Kirkland remains on death row, awaiting execution for the murders of Crawford and Kenny. In May 2010, Ayanna Stanley Jones tragically lost her life during a police raid on her Detroit home. The raid was part of an investigation to apprehend a murder suspect, and it was filmed as part of the TV show The First 48. Officer Joseph Weekly, who was leading the raid, discharged his weapon, and Ayanna was fatally shot. During the retrial of Officer Weekly, Ayanna's grandmother, Myrtilla Jones, provided emotional testimony, recounting how Ayanna had been sleeping on the couch when the police entered.
I'm laying there screaming, asking somebody to help my granddaughter, because he just shot her in the head. And he wouldn't even help her. They turned on the light and seen that she had been shot and carried out the house. Oh, man. Oh, my God. Oh, Jesus.
She described the moment she realized her granddaughter had been shot and her desperate cries for help.
Why you do it? Please tell me why you come in my house like that.
Overcome with emotion, Myrtilla lashed out at Officer Weekly, accusing him of killing Ayanna and blaming him for the tragic event.
You killed my grandbaby. You There you try to blame me. You know I never touched you, Mr. Weekly. You know I never touched you. You know you're wrong. I get no sleep. The flashbacks, I wouldn't wish them on nobody in the world.
The defense argued that Myrtilla had lunged at Weekly, causing him to accidentally fire his weapon. Myrtilla denied this accusation, insisting that she had never touched the officer. Her emotional outburst led to a brief pause in the trial, and she was escorted off the witness stand. The judge reminded the jury to base their decision solely on the facts, and not on the emotional testimony. Officer Weekly was charged with involuntary manslaughter and reckless endangerment with a firearm. The first trial in 2013 ended in a mistrial due to a hung jury. A retrial in 2014 also ended in a mistrial when the jury could not reach a unanimous verdict. In January 2015, the remaining charge against Weekly was dismissed. Despite these legal setbacks, the case remained unresolved in terms of criminal accountability. Meanwhile, the family of Ayanna Stanley Jones filed a civil lawsuit against the city of Detroit and Officer Weekly. After nearly a decade of legal proceedings, the case was nearing a civil trial in 2019. However, just days before the trial was set to begin, the city of Detroit reached an $8.25 million settlement with Ayanna's family. Dalia DiPolito's legal journey began in 2009 when she attempted to have her husband, Michael DiPolito, killed. The crime was part of an elaborate sting operation where an undercover police officer posed as a hitman. Dalia was arrested after she met with the officer, believing she was hiring a killer to murder her husband. The entire plot was recorded, leading to her conviction on charges of solicitation to commit murder with a gun. In 2017, after a lengthy legal battle, Dalia DiPolito was convicted by a jury. The case drew widespread attention, partly due to its dramatic nature and because it was featured on the TV show Cops, which documented the police sting operation that led to her arrest. Throughout the trial, Dalia maintained that she was the victim of a setup, and her defense attorneys argued that the undercover operation was an overreach by the authorities. Following her conviction, Dalia was sentenced in July 2017. The prosecution sought the maximum sentence of 30 years in prison, emphasizing the seriousness of her actions.
You want probation to know how much income you had.
What does this have to do with anything?
I'm not trying to attack his character, Judge. I'm trying
What's the question to even make sense?
Mr. DiPolito, hold on.
During the sentencing phase, Michael DiPolito took the stand and testified about the emotional toll the case had taken on him. He explained that the situation had forever changed his life, and he expressed frustration that Dalia, instead of taking responsibility for her actions, had blamed him and the police.
We're still sitting here acting like this girl didn't do this, like they're acting like that. It's amazing. It just blows me away. Like, I can't even believe it.
Dalia's defense team pushed for a much lighter sentence, requesting just 2 years with an exception of 1 year of jail time, given that she had already served 163 days under house arrest. They argued that her lack of a prior criminal record and her background as a mother made her deserving of leniency. However, the prosecution remained firm in its stance, advocating for the full 30-year sentence. Judge Glenn Kelly ultimately sentenced Dalia DiPolito to 16 years in prison. The decision took into account the severity of her actions, as well as the time she had already served under house arrest. As of now, Dalia DiPolito is serving her 16-year sentence at the Lowell Correctional Institution near Ocala, Florida. In 2010, Taylor Cheney shot and killed 20-year-old Anthony Pitts outside Pandora's Sports Bar in Buffalo, following an argument between the two men. The incident began inside the bar and escalated once they were outside. Cheney admitted to shooting Pitts in the head during a confrontation, though the exact reason for the argument remains unclear.
And I guess he just decided to go out and have a good time and spend some money and get chicken wings from Pandora's with friends, and this is what happens to him.
The case was solved quickly due to surveillance footage from the bar, which showed Pitts standing with his hands in his pockets at the time of the shooting, with no weapon visible. Despite this, the prosecution argued that Pitts had a gun, and DNA evidence linked him to the weapon.
We have the best evidence possible, unbiased and completely unbiased evidence in the form of that video, where it shows Mr. Pitts standing on that corner with his hands in his pockets. We know from the crime scene investigation he did not have a gun on his person.
The prosecution just said, Your Honor, is not true. Mr. Pitts did have on him that night. It is in evidence. A DNA test was done, and his DNA was found on that weapon.
In September 2019, Cheney pleaded guilty to first-degree manslaughter. At his sentencing in Erie County Court, he expressed regret for his actions.
Your Honor, I can't take back what I've done, but I can accept responsibility for my actions and make amends.
The victim's family, although still grieving, expressed that they were ready to move forward with their lives now that the case had been resolved. Cheney was sentenced to 25 years in prison with 5 years of post-supervision. In addition to manslaughter, he received sentences for 2 other charges: 7 years for criminal possession of a weapon and 2 years for violating probation. The judge ruled that all sentences would run concurrently. Tamor McIntyre, a 24-year-old former Texas rapper known as TK47, is set to stand trial for capital murder on February 10, 2025. He is accused of fatally shooting and robbing 23-year-old Mark Anthony Saldivar in April 2017. The crime occurred in a parking lot near North Star Mall, where Saldivar was killed after being robbed of his camera equipment. At the time of the murder, McIntyre was on the run after cutting off his GPS monitor while out on bond. He was eventually captured in New Jersey. During his time evading capture, McIntyre released a song called The Race, which became a viral hit. The song, which describes his life on the run, amassed over 360 million views on YouTube and made it to number 44 on the Billboard Hot 100. They worried that the widespread recognition of the video could affect the jury pool, potentially making it difficult to find impartial jurors.
The nature of the case involves a music video, and that music video is very famous and well known, so we may need a little bit more than the average pool because people are familiar and have formed an opinion.
In addition to the capital murder charge, McIntyre has been serving a 55-year prison sentence for a previous murder conviction in Tarrant County. Since being incarcerated, he has also faced 3 new charges related to prohibited substances in a correctional facility. The jury selection will begin on February 7th, and the trial will be held in the 187th District Court. If McIntyre is found guilty of the capital murder, he will be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole at the Creeps Justice Center. In December 2012, Billy Tran, upset over a business dispute, went to the home of his former business partner, Robert Snyder, in San Antonio. When Robert answered the door, Tran shot him T, then turned the gun on Robert's wife, Beatrice, killing her. Gerald, another business partner, was upstairs in the house when the shooting occurred. Upon hearing the gunfire, he rushed downstairs and tried to wrestle the gun away from Tran. After a tense struggle, Gerald managed to disarm Tran. Shockingly, he recognized the person who had killed his friends. It was someone he knew well. Tran was later arrested and pleaded guilty to the double murder. However, during his sentencing hearing, he attempted to withdraw his plea, claiming his lawyer had pressured him into it. The judge denied his request to retract the plea and also rejected his bid to have the 2 life sentences run concurrently. As a result, Tran was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms, meaning he must serve 1 life sentence before starting the second. Maxwell Anderson's involvement in the tragic case of 19-year-old Sade Robinson began innocently enough on the evening of April 1st, 2024. The 2 met at a local restaurant in Milwaukee for dinner and drinks, but their night ended in a chilling series of events that would forever change the course of their lives. The following day, Robinson was reported missing, and authorities quickly launched a search. Days later, parts of her body were discovered in different locations around Milwaukee County and Waukegan, Illinois. The remains were traced back to Anderson, leading investigators to charge him with the murder, mutilation, and disposal of Robinson's body.
I assume that is still the case, that the defense is not going to be to blame someone else for the crime or that he's going to present an alibi at trial, but I just wanted to confirm that on the record.
Anderson's defense team initially suggested that the prosecution might be focusing on the wrong individual.
Regarding another individual, we don't know who killed her, so we're not able to identify a person. Certainly, we're not agreeing that our client killed her. It was some other person of whom we don't know.
Later, the defense team confirmed that they would not present an alibi or blame anyone else for the crime.
Okay, well, there's no alibi because he was at home.
As the case moved forward, Anderson appeared in court where both the prosecution and defense worked to prepare for trial. The prosecution outlined their witnesses, including experts in fields such as medical examination, anthropology, DNA analysis, and arson investigation, while Anderson's attorneys reviewed the case's details to prepare their arguments. The prosecution was focused on presenting a solid case based on the evidence recovered, while the defense aimed to cast doubt on the circumstances. Originally set to begin in December 2024, Anderson's trial was delayed after a request from the defense to have more time to review the phone records and other key evidence. The new trial date was set for May 27, 2025. This delay has been met with frustration from Robinson's family, who had hoped for a quicker resolution. Anderson remains in custody with a $5 million bond awaiting his trial. A scheduling conference is set for February 2025, with a pretrial hearing scheduled for April. Antonio Guzman, a 22-year-old from Houston, is charged with the murder of his 37-year-old uncle, Jose Torres. Torres, a dispatcher for the Spring Branch Independent School District Police Department, was found dead at his home on Mallard Stream Court in Northwest Houston on November 15, 2024. Guzman was arrested on November 17, 2024, 2 days after the incident, by the Houston Police Department SWAT team. Guzman, who had lived with his uncle and aunt for the past 6 years, is being held on a $200,000 bond. He has no prior criminal record, and his attorney emphasizes his presumption of innocence.
The reason being is that Mr. Guzman is a first-time offender, has never been in any type of trouble with law enforcement before. Additionally, Mr. Guzman is a member of the community, has ties to the community, and as does everyone, he has the absolute presumption of innocence at this time.
During a recent court appearance, the judge determined that there was enough evidence to move forward with the case against Antonio Guzman. His attorney, Kimberly McTorry, expressed hope that the case would be resolved in a fair and just manner once all the evidence is reviewed.
I am hopeful that once we've received the evidence, that I'm hopeful that the case will be able to be resolved in a way that is fair and just.
In his confession, Guzman told investigators that he felt unloved and unwanted by his uncle, which he claims led to the tragic incident. Guzman's defense attorney, Kimberly McTorry, intends to review the confession and ensure that his rights were respected during the interrogation.
Obviously, that's always going to be an obstacle, but there are many things that come along with the consideration as to whether or not a statement or confession is properly taken. So as soon as I receive all the evidence from the state, I will take a look at that and be sure that he was properly given his Miranda rights when he made this statement. Additionally, that law enforcement stayed within the bounds of the Constitution and did not violate his constitutional rights in any way when taking this statement.
Guzman's next court appearance is scheduled for January 28, 2025. The case has attracted attention due to the family connection and the emotional aspects of the crime. Brian Kohberger, a former PhD criminology student, was arrested in December 2022 in connection with the brutal murders of 4 University of Idaho students, Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogan, Zana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, who were stabbed to death in an off-campus rental house in Moscow, Idaho. Kohberger, 28, was living in Pullman, Washington at the time, studying at Washington State University, just a short distance from the crime scene. The investigation into the murders gained national attention due to the shock of the crime and the uncertainty surrounding the perpetrator. Police had little evidence to go on initially, but eventually identified Kohberger through DNA collected from a knife sheath found at the crime scene. They also used surveillance footage that showed a white Hyundai Elantra matching Kohberger's car near the house where the murders occurred. Cell phone data and more than 20,000 pieces of evidence were also linked to Kohberger, building the case against him.
Police Department search warrant!
Kohberger was arrested in Pennsylvania on December 30th, 2022, and brought back to Idaho to face charges. In January 2023, he was arraigned in court. The judge accidentally mispronounced the victims' names.
Zana Kernodle. Excuse me. This is hard. I'm sorry. You understand the charge in count 2, murder in the first degree? Yes.
When asked for his plea, Kohberger chose to remain silent. This rare decision led the judge to enter a not guilty plea on his behalf. Kohberger's stance was seen as a potential act of defiance, as defendants typically enter a plea when they believe the charges against them are unjust.
Your Honor, we will be standing silent.
Because Mr. Kohberger is standing silent, I'm going to enter not guilty pleas on each charge.
And it is very unusual that he took that stance. Historically, we found that if someone feels as though the charges that are being levied against them are unfair, they can choose that as an act of defiance.
Over the months following his arrest, Kohberger's defense team raised several motions, including challenging the evidence and questioning the validity of some of the collected data. In August 2025, Kohberger's trial is scheduled to begin with jury selection starting in July. The trial was delayed due to scheduling conflicts and concerns about jurors being affected by the media attention surrounding the case. To address these concerns, the trial will now take place in Boise, Idaho, rather than Moscow, to ensure a fair and impartial jury. The trial is expected to be complex, given the magnitude of the case and the evidence presented. Prosecutors have stated that they plan to pursue the death penalty if Kohberger is convicted. Meanwhile, the families of the victims continue to express frustration with the prolonged legal process, urging for justice and closure. In September 2011, Lindsay Lowe, a resident of Hendersonville, Tennessee, gave birth to twin boys in the bathroom of her parents' home. She had hidden the pregnancy from her family and fiance. Instead of seeking medical help, she killed both boys immediately after birth and concealed their bodies. The following day, her mother discovered one of the boys and contacted the authorities. When questioned, Lowe admitted to the killings, explaining that she had been in denial about the pregnancy and acted out of fear.
Okay, Ms. Morgan, do you have verdicts?
Yes, Your Honor.
Would you please read each verdict, and I'll ask you to read your verdict for count one.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of first-degree felony murder.
Okay. Count two.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of first-degree felony murder.
Okay. Count three.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of first-degree premeditated murder.
Okay. Count four.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of first-degree premeditated murder.
Okay. Count four.
Count five.
Excuse me, count five. Yes, ma'am.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of aggravated child.
And count six.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of aggravated child.
Okay. Could you please pass the verdicts to the deputy, please? Very good. The verdicts are in order. I will poll each one of you individually. And Mr. Douglas, I'll start with you, sir. Mr. Douglas, are these your verdicts?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Huey, are these your verdicts?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Cuddles, are these your verdicts?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Walker, are these your verdicts?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Morgan, are these your verdicts?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Roofer, are these your verdicts?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Stevens, are these your verdicts?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Backlund, are these your verdicts?
Yes, sir.
Ms. House, are these your verdicts?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Reed, are these your verdicts?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Burleson, are these your verdicts?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jones, are these your verdicts?
Yes, sir.
Let the record reflect that the jury has been polled as reflected by their answers. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the state of Tennessee, Sumner County, I want to thank you for 7 days of very hard, intense work. You may be excused. We are grateful for your efforts, your hard work, and your sacrifice.
In March 2013, after a 7-day trial, a Sumner County jury found Lowe guilty of 2 counts of first-degree felony murder, 2 counts of first-degree premeditated murder, and 2 counts of aggravated child abuse.
I will merge the murder convictions into one conviction, and according to the law, I sentence you to life in the Tennessee Department of Correction. He has found you guilty, counts 5 and 6, of aggravated child abuse. That is an A felony with a range of 15 to 25 years in the state penitentiary.
The court merged the murder convictions for each boy, resulting in 2 life sentences, along with 2 concurrent 25-year sentences for child abuse. Lowe was immediately taken into custody to begin serving her sentence. The conviction was later upheld on appeal, with the Tennessee Supreme Court affirming the ruling in 2018.
Unprecedented, in my view, to show that a juror lied not just to the lawyers, but to the judge.
In September 2019, Lowe filed for post-conviction relief, claiming that one of the jurors in her trial had prior knowledge of the case and had already formed an opinion about her guilt.
The order is suggesting that the court is granting a new trial for her based upon the constitutional concerns that the court has about the juror not giving truthful answers and contaminating the process.
Her attorneys argued that this violated her right to a fair trial. In October 2022, Judge D. David Gay granted her a new trial, citing potential juror bias. Lowe was released from prison after serving nearly 9 years. She returned to live with her parents and secured a job while awaiting further legal proceedings. The state of Tennessee appealed the decision, arguing that the alleged juror misconduct did not significantly impact the trial's outcome. In June 2024, the Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals reversed the ruling, reinstating Lowe's original convictions. The appellate court determined that her post-conviction appeal had been filed too late and that there was no conclusive proof that the juror's prior knowledge had affected the verdict. After the court's decision, Lowe was rearrested and taken back into custody. She was initially released on a $75,000 bond, but shortly afterward, the court revoked her bond, ordering her immediate return to prison. Her legal team has announced plans to appeal to the Tennessee Supreme Court, hoping to overturn the appellate court's decision. In February 2022, emergency responders were called to the apartment complex, where they found Mercedes Lozoya in critical condition. She was immediately transported to the hospital, but despite medical efforts, she did not survive. Authorities launched an investigation, leading to the arrest of her mother, Katrina Mendoza, and her mother's boyfriend, Jose Ruiz. Reports from investigators suggested that Mercedes had endured prolonged mistreatment in the household. The case deeply unsettled the local community, particularly neighbors who had reported concerns but saw little intervention. As legal proceedings moved forward, Mendoza chose to accept a plea deal in August 2023. She admitted to failing to protect her daughter and agreed to testify against Ruiz. In exchange, her sentence was capped at 45 years in prison. Ruiz's trial took place in March 2024, during which multiple witnesses provided testimonies about what they had seen and heard in the months leading up to Mercedes's passing.
What is it about, well, let me ask you this. Have you lived in apartments before?
Yes.
Have you heard children crying before?
Yes, but not this way.
Okay. What was it about this crying that caused you concern?
Two things. The intensity, like the wailing and how severely the child was crying, and the duration. It was very prolonged.
And while she was crying, did you ever hear her say any words with it?
Not words, just ow, ow, ow.
You could hear her say ow?
Yes.
How often would she say ow?
Continuously.
And are you able to differentiate a child that is crying because they're upset they lost a toy versus a child crying in pain?
Yes.
What was this cry like?
More definitely in pain.
Were there other noises that you heard that maybe led you to believe that there was something going on causing the child pain?
Yes.
What other noises?
There was a male voice yelling, and then there was the voice of something making contact with the body, like a hand or a device, or I don't know.
How often would you hear a male yelling?
Quite often. There was fights in that home most of the time.
Were you able to hear words when he would yell?
Sometimes, yes.
Did it sound like he was yelling at the child?
In that particular time when I called 911, yes, absolutely.
And you said you heard some kind of contact. Can you, was it a banging noise? Was it a screeching noise? What was the contact noise that you heard?
It's more like when a spank happens or like when something is slammed.
Okay,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yep.
noise?
Yep.
Did you ever hear a female, an adult voice?
Yes.
What was the nature of the female's voice when you would hear it?
Yelling as well.
Was, could you tell if it was directed at the child as well or someone else?
I could not.
Specifically, and we listened to your 911 call. You had reviewed your 911 call today, correct?
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
You had reviewed the 911 call that you made.
Correct.
Prior to coming to court.
Correct.
When you made that call, was there a voice that seemed like attributable to the pain and the crying that you heard?
From the child?
Yes.
Yes.
Was that the male or the female voice?
The female voice was saying ow, and she was just continuously crying and wailing, and the male voice was yelling at her.
Do you recall if he was saying anything when he was yelling?
Yes.
What was he saying?
He was saying, do not cry, do not cry. I can't really tell if he was saying do not do that or and then definitely saying I am talking to you.
Do you recall if you heard the adult female voice during this interaction?
I do not recall that.
How often would you hear the child crying accompanied by another individual, an adult, yelling? How often would you hear that?
I don't recall how often, but I recall that the time that I called was the most severe time that I've heard it.
Do you feel that it was the male or the female who was causing the banging noises?
The time that I called was definitely the male.
And can you recall how many times you called 911?
For the noise complaints or for the incident in general?
Specifically regarding just any concerns with 812.
I want to say 3 times.
Okay. So, okay. And did you ever observe any injuries on the child?
No.
Mohamed Hassona, a resident of Henry B Apartments in San Antonio, began noticing unusual disturbances in late 2021. Living in the unit above Jose Ruiz, he frequently heard the sound of a girl crying, often for extended periods. The intensity of the cries concerned him, as they did not sound like typical tantrums, but rather distress. He also heard loud voices and what seemed to be sudden, forceful noises from the apartment below. Concerned, he called 911 multiple times between November and December, reporting his fears that something was wrong. However, despite his repeated efforts, no significant action was taken. His testimony was reinforced by another neighbor who lived next to Ruiz's apartment and had similar concerns.
In general, all over?
In general. Well, I guess, what was your first concern about Mr. Ruiz?
Mainly it was just the loud music at first. It was just random hours, like 12, 2 in the morning, and I mean, then it was like the parking.
Then it was the parking?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Was there ever anything that caused you so much concern that you wanted to call the police?
Yes.
What was that?
The screaming, the sounds of hitting, yelling, kids crying.
What kind of screaming did you hear?
Like just cussing, yelling at them, just yelling in general. I don't know.
Did you hear a male voice yelling?
I heard both.
And you heard a female?
Correct.
Were these adult voices?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever hear children yelling?
Not so much yelling, but more crying or screaming.
And you had a baby at the time, right? Can you tell the difference between crying because they need something or crying from pain?
Yes.
What was this crying?
It was harmful, like it was, yes.
Did you ever hear, as the child was crying, did she ever say anything?
I did hear him refer to her as dad.
She would refer to the male voice as dad?
So I assumed he was the father, yes. It would be like, no, dad, stop, or just crying in general, saying stop, or just tears, or screaming, no. That's about it.
Did you ever learn the child's name?
Yes.
How did you know the child's name?
I heard the female voice scream Mercedes a lot, like she was blaming her for a lot of things, saying things were her fault, and like, Mercedes, stop, or just really loud.
Was there another child with them?
Yes.
Did you know the other child's name?
No.
Did you ever hear another name cried out?
Mm-mm.
It was always Mercedes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm sorry. You'll have to say yes or no.
Yes.
It was always Mercedes.
Yes.
And you never heard any other children's name?
No.
And you didn't even know what the other child's name was?
No, I didn't.
So were you ever introduced to the children?
No.
You only know Mercedes' name because that's what you heard screamed through the video?
Yes.
How often would you hear the
crying? At least once a week. I mean, it was a while ago, so I can't say specifically the days, but it was quite often. It was a little too much, you know.
Were there ever any other noises accompanying the crying?
Yes, like I said, the loud music a lot of the times. You could hear like slaps or punches.
Okay, and the slaps or punches, would it be a slap, small slap, or what makes you think that they were slaps or punches?
Well, punches are more muffled, you know, you kind of hear like a ugh in the end, and then a slap is a little bit louder, higher pitched. And I mean, it has to be loud for it to be going through the wall.
And was it at the same time you heard the crying?
Pretty much most times, yeah.
Okay, so hearing the yelling and the crying and the noises put together, that's what led you to believe it was a bunch?
Yes.
Did you ever document anything when you would hear these?
Yes.
Why would you document what you heard?
It just felt wrong. Like I had just had a gut feeling that something was wrong, and it just better feel safe than sorry kind of thing.
And did you call the police?
Yes.
And did an officer come out?
Yes.
Did anything happen with that?
No.
Did an officer ever talk to you
No.
before it was too late?
Yes.
This neighbor reported hearing a girl calling out in distress, repeatedly saying, "No, Dad, stop," and crying in a way that suggested fear rather than ordinary frustration. The neighbor also noted that the mother, Mendoza, could sometimes be heard raising her voice, though her words were less clear. Feeling uneasy about what was happening, the neighbor had kept notes and eventually contacted the authorities, but like Hasona, was left frustrated by the lack of immediate action. During the trial, Mercedes' older sister also testified, offering insight into the family's home life. She described an environment where fear was constant, where both she and Mercedes were often anxious about the unpredictable moods in the household. Her testimony was a pivotal moment in the trial, reinforcing the prosecution's case against Ruiz.
Jury find the defendant, Jose Ruiz, guilty of the offense of injury to a child as charged in count 1 of the indictment.
After deliberation, the jury found Ruiz guilty of causing serious harm to a child. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the most serious charge. Additionally, he received 20 years for a secondary charge and 10 years each for multiple other counts related to neglect and endangerment, all to be served concurrently. The sentencing ensured that Ruiz would spend the remainder of his life behind bars. In early 2024, the disappearance of Nazia Harris from Detroit's East Side set off an intense investigation that would reveal troubling details and systemic failures. On January 9th, Nazia was last seen stepping off her school bus near Cornwall Street and 3 Mile Drive. When she failed to return home, her grandmother and legal guardian, Annette Harris, reported her missing the next morning. Investigators later discovered that she had used her school-issued tablet to communicate with a device linked to Jarvis Butts, arranging to meet after school. Surveillance footage confirmed she had left school as expected. As the days passed with no sign of her, the Detroit Public Schools Community District initiated an inquiry, but by February, the case was transferred to the Detroit Police Department. Investigators questioned Butts, who claimed he had last seen Nazia weeks earlier at his grandmother's house. He also mentioned that she would occasionally visit his auto repair shop. In March, the first significant breakthrough came when a woman discovered Nazia's school ID near a gas station on Detroit's west side. She reported having stepped over it multiple times before finally picking it up and alerting the police. This led authorities to expand their search efforts, focusing on areas linked to Butts. One key location was the Rouge Rivers near 7 Mile and Berg Road.
Washed up on the riverbank. There was a storm recently, so we were in the water and on the riverbanks.
Okay, so you're kind of looking for maybe some child-sized clothing.
Yes.
Okay, and did you come across any clothing that you thought maybe would fit a description?
Yes.
Okay, and where was that at?
That was south of 7 Mile and Berg, near a abandoned structure next to a dirt parking lot. About, I can't give an exact distance, maybe 50 feet off the river.
Okay. And when you find articles of clothing, what is it that you do in your role?
So there's a lot of stuff that might be washed up. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to age it and make sure that it is something that could possibly be related. And then I'm going to just immediately report a picture to the incident command so that they can send people to properly inspect it.
Okay, and when you say age, what do you mean by aging?
Just to make sure that it hasn't obviously been in the brush for years, or it's not some garbage that washed up. That's all.
Okay, and in this search in particular, what was kind of the time frame that you were supposed to be like using to age?
Recent, not like within a month or two.
Okay.
So it would still look new.
Okay. And so when you find items, you said that you age them and then you kind of report them to incident command.
Yes.
Okay. And how is it that you report them? Do you go at like a walkie-talkie? Do you call them on the phone?
Via radio.
Okay.
Yeah, via radio, and then there's usually some type of a chat that I wasn't communicating directly on the chat. I just kind of forwarded the photos to a supervisor who then gave the photos to the incident commander.
Okay.
And they would divvy those out to the detectives.
Okay. And what is it that you found in this case?
I found a I don't know if this is the right term for it, but like a onesie. It was mostly balled up in the brush with the shoe inside of it. And so I pulled the, I didn't know it was clothing at the time, but I pulled it out of the brush just to kind of open it up and see what it was. And then once I saw that it was clothing with the shoe inside, I just reported it to the incident command.
Okay, and when you're touching these items, are you wearing gloves?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall, describe the onesie, color, size, anything like that?
Pink.
Okay.
Honestly, the size, small.
And what about the shoes?
Shoe.
Or shoes, the shoe that you got.
It was a
sorry.
small Nike shoe.
Okay.
And it was,
sorry.
it was inside the onesie, which was inside out.
Okay, and were you instructed to recover those at the time?
Like bag them and bring them somewhere?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No, that wasn't.
Were you, how do you, I guess, convey to someone where at these items are?
GPS coordinates.
Okay, and did you author like a paragraph report in this case?
Yes.
Okay, and did you include coordinates in that report?
Yes, and they were incorrect in that report. I just went over it yesterday. I do have the correct coordinates if you guys want those.
Okay, yes, could you please provide us with the correct coordinates?
Yes.
And is there something that you're going to be using to refresh your memory?
I have a piece of paper here.
Okay.
So, the coordinates that were provided in the paper were for the incident command. These coordinates are very close to where that piece of clothing was found.
Okay.
They're decimal degrees, 42.426693.
Okay.
Negative 83.268497.
Okay. So the coordinates that are in your report are where incident command was kind of set out?
That's the incident command, yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's already admitted as People's Exhibit 14. Now I'm going to show just some specific pictures from that. We're looking at picture 63 here. Tell me, do you recognize anything in this photo?
Yes.
What is it that you recognize?
The pink article of clothing in the shoe.
Okay, and when you initially saw these items, is that how you saw them?
No, they were just balled up in the brush, just kind of stuffed in there.
Okay.
So,
oh, sorry, continue.
I pulled them out and set them that way so the detectives would see it.
Okay, so I'm gonna go to photo 69. Is this the shoe that you had found that was inside the leg of the pink jumpsuit? Or
Yes.
onesie? Okay.
Yes, it is.
And 67. Is this
Yep.
also a photo of them just from the behind?
Yes.
Okay, and you're the one who kind of took them apart and placed them separately like that?
I did,
Okay.
yes.
During a search operation on March 12th, Border Patrol Agent W. Barnes, part of a larger search and rescue team, came across a small pink onesie with a Nike shoe tucked inside, hidden in the brush. Recognizing its potential significance, he documented the finding and alerted Incident Command. The clothing appeared relatively fresh, with no signs of long-term exposure or animal interference. Investigators later determined that the onesie matched what Nazia was last seen wearing, with some signs of damage that could indicate a struggle. Months later, on September 26th, Wayne County prosecutor Kim Worthy announced that Butts was being charged with first-degree premeditated murder, child sexually abusive activity, and second-degree criminal sexual conduct.
You look at that face, and you do not see the horrors that she had gone through in her short life. The exploitation, the molestations, the sexual abuse, and the pregnancy that she was concealing.
Even without a body, investigators believed there was enough evidence to conclude that Nazia was no longer alive. Further examination revealed that Butts had been sending explicit messages to Nazia since at least September 2022. By November 2023, he was aware of her pregnancy, and his online searches included topics related to abortions and toxic substances.
Just start with the ones that are highlighted.
Yep, so this search was December 9th, 2023 at 3:32 UTC time. So you would actually have to subtract 5 hours, which would make it the night of December 8th. And the site is what's visited. It's Drink Me and Abort Your Baby, the Herbal Abortion Tea by Maya.
Okay. And what about the next one after that?
There is a site that's visited on December, it says here December 10th, 2023 at 9:32 p.m. UTC, so -5. And the site visited is plannedparenthood.org/learn/abortion/the abortion pill.
And
the
the
next search is immediately after that, so December 10th at 9:32 p.m. UTC, the abortion pill, get the facts about medication abortion. There is a search that was conducted before that on December 10th, 2023 at 9:31 p.m. UTC. And that site is plannedparenthood.org/blog/can I use herbs to have an abortion at home.
And the next
The
one?
next one is December 10th, 2023 at 9:31 p.m. UTC. Can I use herbs to have an abortion at home? Planned Parenthood.
And the next one?
The next one is December 10th, 2023 at 9:36 p.m. UTC, so again, -5 hours. And that site is, it's ansirh.org, research, over-counter medication abortion. Search December 10th, 2023 at 9:36 p.m. Over-the-counter medication abortion, and that's from that same place before, ANSIRH. December 10th, 2023 at 9:32. Planned Parenthood, abortion, the abortion pill. How do I have an abortion using only misoprostol, misoprostol. The next search, December 10th, 2023 at 9:32. Planned Parenthood, learn abortion, the abortion. So it's like the same, back and forth to the same site.
When asked had he met Nazia before her disappearance, he replied,
He stated to me that he had last seen her at the end of December or early January sometime at grandmother's house getting her hair done.
And did he say anything about knowing where Nazia's bus stop was?
Yes.
Okay, what did he say about that?
He said that her bus stop was at a 3-mile drive in Cornwall.
The case also exposed significant failures within the system. Records revealed that multiple complaints about butts had been filed with Child Protective Services as early as 2015. Despite repeated warnings, no action was taken to intervene, ultimately allowing the situation to escalate.
You've been sitting over there for 4 days with your head down, sitting between and behind your attorney with your mask on and taking vigorous notes. I want you to pay attention and listen to everything I have to say. I have been trying to figure out for the last 5 days, you. At one point I thought you were cognitively impaired in the beginning of this exam. and then maybe you had the brain of a 10-year-old, and that's why you were doing such things. But as I heard more and more testimony, you're just a true definition of a pedophile. Watching you laugh and brag about all the women you have with different women and the children and the girlfriends, and making babies to groom them, and having them in your presence, and cleaning up, quote, cleaning up your shop, and the little girls around you, has landed you here today. You groomed Naziah. You played mind games with her. We all heard that. You controlled her emotionally. She was exposed to so much at such a young age. The text messages between you two were disgusting to hear. And to think that she had you saved in her phone as bae for life. Naziah deserves so much more. And while I mentioned other people that failed her, Jarvis Butts, you are the monster in this whole picture. She did deserve love from her parents and everyone who was in her life. She was ignored, she was neglected, and you took complete advantage of that. She wanted someone to love her, and she will never know what that feels like. Your children deserve more. As much as the defense counsel has raised issues on count 1, all that has done is raise the question of fact for the trier of fact, which means that this will be for a jury or a judge to hear at Third Circuit.
In January 2025, the preliminary hearing presented disturbing details, including text messages and testimonies confirming the abuse Naziah had suffered. The court ruled that there was enough evidence to proceed to trial, which is scheduled for later in the year. Naziah's disappearance and the events that followed serve as a stark reminder of the urgent need for stronger protective measures and systemic reforms to prevent similar tragedies. Big thanks to our viewers for joining the courtroom journey with us. Your interest in the stories of justice is what keeps our channel alive.